does not have a component of sustainable. But look at what happened. BP was going full speed ahead in renewables. The leadership has changed. BP has changed its position now and is reversing to do their core business now back in hydrocarbons. So it may not be as easy to get BP to do what they did with us here, when the policy in London was to be more solar conscious.
So this is more about what the government is doing currently, but in terms of what your citizenry could do to help mitigate the effects of climate change and disaster risk reduction, what more would you like to see from people in Trinidad and Tobago?
Is that first you have to be aware, and secondly you have to take it as something that you are responsible.
Do you think Trinidadians and Tobagonians feel responsible?
No. We don't get as connected as we should with these matters, because many people believe that is not their concern. Even you put it out there, you talk about it. You know, the government offered free light bulbs so as to reduce the consumption of energy. And you get it when you go to pay your bills, right? So people know about it. And it has come to my attention that people have gone and have turned it down. They've gone to pay the bill and the bulbs are available. Not interested. I don't want it. And the only reason why that could happen is because the actual real cost of energy is not being faced by the average person. If you compare what somebody in Barbados pays, or Jamaica or Antigua for electricity, you will understand why their citizens will not do something like that. Because electricity is a huge chunk of their budget. In Trinidad and Tobago, even though we complain and people try to frighten you, oh, they're going to raise the price of electricity, we are still among the cheapest. And the effect of that is that the citizenry is not as responsible as it should be. You're going to buy a car in Trinidad and Tobago. You know anybody who ever discussed with you the fuel consumption of that motor vehicle?
Yeah, I wish they did. I wouldn't have bought a Subaru.
Right. but there are other countries, I mean, where the cost of the vehicle and the type of vehicle, the first thing you want to know about is the fuel consumption, because the fuel is heavily taxed. And once you buy a vehicle that is a gas guzzler, what you're doing is just paying tax unnecessarily. So you want a vehicle that is, much better in its gas consumption. But we here, we were spending, you mentioned a while ago, $60 million.
Billion.
$50 billion
over the
policing.
Yeah.
But did you know that we spend $28 billion in subsidy on gasoline in that same kind of period?
Inclusive of the closure of the refinery?
Yeah, this has nothing to do with the closure. I'm talking about that $60 billion you spoke about is over a period of time.
For national security.
And I'm saying in that similar period of time, we spent $28 billion in fuel subsidy, meaning we paid the fuel bill for people, many of whom could have paid their own bill. But because the policies and the programs in the country were such that these things were deemed to be subsidized as the way of sharing the wealth of the country, that is what we did. But we came to a point now where we couldn't afford that level of subsidy. And I was the Prime Minister at the time when we couldn't afford that subsidy. And we had to make changes. When we made those changes, what was the reaction? The reaction was you had some people organizing march and banging things. And not that, hey, we've come to a point where this is not the best way to go. We still have $1 billion in subsidy going on. And you will hear people saying, people who are supposed to be in the know because they're in the business, deliberately saying, we've removed the subsidy and the government wicked, and there's no subsidy. $1 billion every 12 months we spend on fuel subsidy still in this country. And people still are not fuel conscious. They're not. In my own home, you ask my wife, she'll tell you. When I tell my wife, you pay the light bill. If this marriage is going to work, you pay the light bill. Because like all our shares in Tiantec. Every morning I have to go through the house and turn off all the lights because they will turn it on and they're gone. And they wouldn't turn it off. And if I don't turn it off, it burn the whole day. So we have an understanding in my house.
I mean, it's understandable for the public to be upset because remember, a lot of people's salaries haven't moved for a while. I mean, yours did recently, but a lot of people's salaries haven't moved for a while. So you're increasing the cost of transportation. I'm just saying you have to understand people as well.
About the being energy efficient.
But there needs to be some empathy, Prime Minister, some empathy. I know you didn't call it earlier when Sigoni asked you about your list of qualities, but there needs to be some empathy. So.
What are you accusing me of not having empathy?
Across like that sometimes. I'm not saying you don't, I'm saying it comes across like that.
If I didn't have empathy for the people of Trinidad and Tobago, I wouldn't be in this job. I started out with that empathy. How could I contribute to the next generation of people? I ran a constituency for how many years? For 9 times I go to the polls in Diego Martin, and the people of Diego Martin just don't think I don't have empathy. They think I represent them well, because I made sure, right, at every level where the interests lie, as their representative, that empathy you're talking about, I expressed that to them. And that is why they elected me 9 times. Empathy is not something that you pull out of the air, you know. It's something that you are part of. I am part of Tobago, I'm part of Diego Martinez, I'm part of Trinidad and Tobago. So no narrative by any handler about my empathy or lack thereof. And you know, what do you know about me?
Whatever you tell us.
You don't know him.
I read your book recently. It was really nice.
You know the job I chose when I became a geologist? I discovered that there were Caribbean people, hundreds of thousands of them, whose lives were at stake, exposed to active volcanoes, right? And there wasn't a single geologist in the Caribbean who was trained in volcanology to be able to advise governments in civil defense. And I did that as my profession. And the first volcano I worked on that was active, right? When the population was going that way, I was going that way to the volcano. And it was only when I got married and had a wife and had a child that I decided to put myself as part of the equation. Because many days I would go to work thinking that today could be the day when I get my comeuppance. But when I had somebody to go home to and a child to look after, who I wanted to know her father, I started thinking differently. And when I came into the politics of Trinidad and Tobago and agreed to be a senator and was persuaded to be an MP, it was on the basis I will do this because I think I can help the people who require what I may be able to contribute. So I am not in this empathy talk that makes good stories and nonsense from people who don't know you. And a lot of people who don't know me like to talk about me. That's a good thing. It means that I've kept some aspect of my life semi-private.
Do you still follow the science, Prime Minister? Volcanology and geology? Still keep up to date?
On my computer, yes, and I have a few friends I'm still in touch with, but hopefully I'll do a bit more than now, because I still have some colleagues who I'm hoping that I could spend a bit of time with.
And sorry, Jules. I know you're very much into agriculture as well. Is that where you're headed next, Prime Minister? Are you heading to your farm or your cultivated land?
Yeah, but I never left it, so it's not like going to it. I grew up in that, right? I grew up with a grandmother who had a flower garden that had every possible plant, and I was the gardener, and I loved plants and animals as well. But I got to know the beauty of growing things. And that's why when I went to high school, I chose to do botany. I went to university, I did botany at university because it's me, that's me. I like to plant things, I like to grow things. Ever since I came back, we always had land, we always had farming activity around me. When I was in high school, vacation time, not even by choice, but I mean by force. I had to be involved in what was going on. But I never left it. So now that I have a bit more time, I might get more involved in it. And it's something I really enjoy.
So you're expecting a harvest soon, maybe this season?
Actually, we have the harvest I'm looking forward to. We just got 10,000 yam seedlings from Ghana. It was given to me by some our connections out there. And we've planted them around Trinidad and Tobago. And I'm really anxious to see how it comes out. They haven't they'll start growing and we'll get crops, and hopefully we can propagate that among the farming community. And I find that exciting to grow, and to reintroduce the 4 species of yams that they sent to us. And it's like a pilot project. We have 2 locations in Tobago, 1 in Shagarama, 2 in Chagaramas, 1 in Chaguanas, and so on. And we hope that it will produce something interesting.
Yeah, I always find that what's next question to be quite difficult, because someone once said, one's true future is a place not traversed until one gets there. Who said that?
No, I'm
You did in your book. And I do have a question for you with respect to your future. There was a time where when you traveled for healthcare, you would come back and report to the public and on how it went and things like that. Now, you haven't done that for a while, and you did have a couple of health concerns while in office. Did that play any role in your decision to step down, and are you leaving us in good health?
Thankfully, the answer to that question is yes. And the reason why I have not been telling you anything different is because, thankfully, nothing has gone. The last issue I had was when I had stents put in. Mm-hmm. I had some discomfort. I knew by my normal annual examination that I was building up some plaque in an artery. And over a period of years, it got to the point where I was told that now this is now concerning, and you may want to, when you go home, go to your local doctor, because I go to local doctors and foreign doctors. And they said when the plaque got to a certain level, that year's report was, we think we need to look at this now because it's built up to a level. And I hadn't yet gone to the local doctor, right? And I was out on the golf course one day, and I started feeling a discomfort. Not bad discomfort, but knowing what the doctor had said to me, I said, look, I'm not taking any chance. And I head straight to Dr. Henry in West Shore. And lo and behold, I required to have stents put in. And you were told that, right?
Right.
Since that has happened, I can report that I have had nothing else to report because I've been checked. And the last time I had was last September. And I have had, a good bill of health. And that is why I can say to you now, it has played no role. What has played the role? And I think I said this before. It was my intention in 2020 not to continue after 2020. But where we were in 2020 in a pandemic, I felt a responsibility on 2 counts. One, as the engaged prime minister in the middle of a pandemic, I could not just walk away from the country. And secondly, I had brought a lot of young people into politics and into government. And I thought it was going to be unreasonable of me in 2020 to go off to my own comforts and leave them in a pandemic to fight a general election. And on that basis, to the surprise of my wife, I announced that I was continuing to contest in 2020. So when I went home that night, my wife, who is normally very mild-mannered, as you know, said to me, so you're running for election again? And I knew what that meant. So I had to humble myself and said, well, what I had meant to tell you, but, kind of thing like that. But she handled it very well. But I was pretty sure, as I said on the election night in 2020, if you were there, I said, I will not be doing this again. There will not be another night, election night, where I'll be here talking to you about election results. But some people just didn't believe me. Some people didn't think that was possible because politicians don't do that. But I genuinely meant it. And because of that, because I meant that and because that was my trajectory, I got involved in trying to make sure that when I move on, I don't leave a vacuum behind and I don't leave a mess, as you said, or confusion. So I think it's gone well, and I'm leaving now quite without regrets. Maybe if I had to choose a profession today, given how things have gone and how it's not the kind of way it was 25 years ago. But as is it Dale Enoch or Tony Lee says, this is not 1962, it's not 1972. This is 2025. So I can't really expect it to be what it was. And those of us who are living now, I'm sure when the people who were in your position in radio or in media at 25 years ago or 40 years ago didn't have the same perspective that you have. Maybe when they met Prime Minister, they call him sir. No, you don't do that.
Call you Dr. Rowley all the time. And sir. And Prime Minister.
Yes. The Prime Minister, all of the members of your cabinet, as you talked about this, a vision you had for retirement and so on, you have your members of cabinet, but you specifically chose Minister Stuart Young above all of them.
I tell you, I didn't vote.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm just talking about in terms of, it seems as if you had him in mind, though. At some point, you would have seen something.
Not really. I tell you, people emerge in the political arena. Leadership emerges. When I was in the PNM, coming from a candidate in Tobago West in 1981, and then being a senator in the opposition, nobody is attaching prime ministership to me. Even when I was deputy political leader, I was political leader for 8 years in the PNM. And while one or two persons might have felt that if Manning wasn't there, Rowley might, and I built up a little bit of a following, it wasn't that I was a apparent prime minister. Leadership emerges, especially when situations demand. Right? Winston Churchill didn't become prime minister and national hero in England because he was the biggest war fighter. The circumstances threw up a leader. And in the case of Stuart Young, to answer your question, you may recall when I appointed my first cabinet, Stuart Young was not having his own portfolio. I knew him as a very good lawyer. So I placed him in the office of the Attorney General for a while. I maintained him in the Prime Minister's office, largely on the basis that he was, in fact, a very good lawyer and he would serve well in that situation. And he demonstrated certain qualities that propelled him along. Eventually, the very difficult portfolio of national security, your favorite, he was given that portfolio and he did very well there, especially in dealing with people who we had to deal with. If he has a strength, it is his people skills and his dedication. And these things show over time. And then we had this responsibility to rectify and to make new pathways in the energy sector. I said to you earlier, that thing on energy, spotlight on energy. Okay. I said to you earlier publicly, as Prime Minister, I am going where the decisions are made. I'm not staying in Trinidad and talking to local Trinidad managers of BP and Shell and so. I'm going to the boardrooms where the decisions are made and I'm going to talk to the people who make the decisions. And I did that in Australia, in The Hague, in Amsterdam, in Houston, in London. And Minister Young was there with me by virtue of being minister in the office of the Prime Minister. And his skills, his dedication, his quality emerged, not only to me, but to the other people, until it got to the point that I could send him without being there. And the people who he was going to talk to knew that he came from the Prime Minister and that he was highly regarded by the Prime Minister. And that didn't start last week or last month or last year. What I just told you, I could go right back to the very first few months of the government, because one of the things we had to do as a government was to talk to the government of Japan. We met a contract here that is still today costing us billions of dollars in losses. And had we accepted the original form of that contract, the billions would have been multi-billions. I sent Minister Young to Japan from the sovereign state of Trinidad and Tobago, from the office of the Prime Minister, to talk to the authorities in Japan, to tell them that this contract is inimical to the interests of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And we are friendly nations, and therefore we would expect that the people of Japan would see what we are seeing and would do something about it as we are requesting. They didn't fix the whole contract, but they agreed to make some significant changes. Those significant changes were made, the contract was improved, and the improved contract is now only costing us in losses $1 billion. Ask yourself what the losses would have been if we had not done that. And that was Minister Young's first responsible arrangement away from the office of Prime Minister. And over the years, and it's not to say that I have a number of ministers in the government. Look at Minister Dayal Singh, longest serving Minister of Health. His performance during COVID, right, is a performance that I admired because he was fortunately a person, he's a pharmacist. So his relationship with that technical team from the Ministry of Health that emerged during COVID, that saved so many lives. There are people in this country who don't want to say that. I will tell you, that team led by Dr. Rushan Parasham saved many lives in this country. And as a team, the country did well. We lost about 4,300 people tonight. The richest nation in the world lost 1 million people. The British stopped counting. And I don't know what India counted because we never got a figure from India. In one Italian city alone, they were brought to their knees. We in Trinidad and Tobago had people in the cabinet, in the public service, in the government too much. We have made some significant, we just had a CEO at WASA because we have restructured WASA. We are trying to make WASA more efficient and have our dollars less spent in WASA because WASA gets about $2 billion in subsidy a year. I don't know if you know that. And if WASA is more efficient, then that money could be reduced and it can go elsewhere. So it took a long time. The chairman of WASA today has done a tremendous amount of public service. Mr. Nanga has done a lot of public service to be able to bring WASA to where we are today, right? The work that Minister Gonzalez is doing, going out there in the communities and finding those water sources in communities and bringing water to them from their communities. So that's a novel approach, and it's working well. But good news doesn't sell in Trinidad and Tobago. A handful of people will tell you about everything that's wrong in this country. That might be cool, because there might be a lot of things that are wrong, a lot of things that are not going well. But the sound of their voices must not always drown out all the good things that are happening. Look at the young people. There are some people who don't have a good word to say about young people in this country. But you come out there on Panorama, to Youth Panorama, and watch these young people from Sangre Grande come in town and win, and watch them from San Fernando and Tobago, and you ask yourself, are these the young people of our nation? And the answer is yes. And not all of them have a gun in their hand trying to kill you. The vast majority out there doing well, hoping to be model citizens and to contribute to a nation. And they need to be led by people who can see positive sometimes. If you run in your show and all you could talk about is how things bad, you're never going to improve. You have to be able to separate the wheat from the chaff. Not every day is going to be a good day. This country is not perfect, but it is one of the best places in the world to live. And that is why people just rush to come here. But unfortunately, many people who are here, and by many I mean a few thousand, I don't mean the vast majority, but it only takes one drop of ink to change the color of the water. One drop of ink. And you have to isolate and cauterize that drop of ink if you want clear water. this country has a good future. And the whole question of leadership is something that needs to be fairly assessed as part of the national conversation, because leadership is not easy. Anybody could follow and not even be noticed. But once you are in a leadership position, you become a target for everybody. Some for good, some for evil. And if you're afraid of that, don't accept leadership. I have accepted leadership in this country, and that's why I'm not angry, except with one person who did one thing. But everything else, I have no regrets. As a matter of fact, I think I have put my life to service. So I sing in the bathroom sometimes. And my favorite tune is from Sound of Music. Somewhere in my youth or childhood, I must have done something good. Thank you. I hope to see you again sometime.
Thank you, Prime
Thank
Minister.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.